Hello, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Life in Motion podcast. This is the session number 9. No, I'm lying to you. This is the session number 10. It's passing so very fast that this is about having your resumes ready, which is within the frame of my book, the second part of it, career development. And I'm doing this as part of the first season of this podcast that I call Awakening, where I bring experts from the market, very talented professionals to help me uncovering more insights and bring even more value to you out there in the audience with tips, tricks, ideas, questions for reflection that you can immediately apply and get successful in this case with your own career. For today, I have Emily, Vaclav, and Aytuna together with me, who are going to present their stories, their knowledge, and some of the best strategies that work for them and for their clients. And that said, I would immediately dive into this and invite Aytuna to introduce herself to this audience. Hello, Aytuna. Good morning again.
Thanks, Eduardo. It's great to be here. Let me shortly introduce myself. I'm Aytuna Otto. I'm based in the Netherlands, originally from Turkey. I have a career history of 22 plus years in corporate in different roles. And very recently, I have become a career coach, a certified career coach as well. But I have been doing mentoring and coaching aside my job since quite some time to young professionals, to students, etc. So I'm looking forward to discuss further about this, which is the kind of backbone of the career coaching, right?
It is so important, right, Aduna? And I'm so grateful for you being here today. You are from this very many people participating in the podcast episodes, someone that I have met here in LinkedIn. And we just came to get to know each other virtually right now, preparing for this episode recording, which talks about the importance of networking. That's not really the core of today's session, but I think it goes very well when we think about resumes and where the resumes should go. So thank you very much for being here. I so much appreciate it. Next, a good friend of mine. Now, I guess from a very long time, I am already allowed to say that. Vaclav, be welcome to this podcast episode.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. It's a really pleasure being here. So my name is Vaclav Sulista, and I'm an analytical chemist by first education. I spent the entire professional life in the pharma industry. Last 16 years, we have the common employer, Novartis, and 7 years ago, I started my business as a career consultant. Similar as Aytuna, I was doing mentoring since ages as a mentor of qualified female migrants here in Basel. And at the end, it turned out into a job, which is great. I have a diplomatic side job. I'm a honorary consul of Czechia. And definitely, I use this stage to not forget that we have an official short name, Czechia. You don't have to call us Czech Republic all the time. So it's official, it's well accepted worldwide in sports. And I'm a little bit weird career consultant in terms that I almost never applied for anything. I don't like writing CVs, so I will play a little bit the advocatus diaboli here in this round. I'm looking very much forward to it.
Thank you so much, Vaslav. I think this is one of the reasons why I was really, really happy having you here with me. As Vaslav mentioned, we have worked together in the same company, in the same groups, but 3-5 years apart. So we never met there, and we ended up meeting here, which I will be provocative now, Vaslav, is a big career resume platform, isn't it, LinkedIn? No, don't answer now. We are going to get to that very, very soon. Now, over to Emily. Thank you so much, Emily. Good morning. Thank you for being here together with us. Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you so much, Eduardo, for inviting me onto this podcast. I'm really delighted to be here today. Yeah, so I'm Emily Rappitt. I'm based here in Zurich. I'm British by nationality, and I'm a leadership and career change expert and love supporting people with their career transitions. Before I did that, I spent most of my career at Deloitte. I was there for 26 years, and I investigated corporate white-collar crime, which was incredibly interesting. And then I became a group compliance COO at a private bank. So you may ask, how on earth did that lead me to become a career coach? Is a very good question. Throughout my whole career, I've loved I'm very passionate about working with people. And I would say I'm a serial coach and mentor, sort of unofficially, before I got my qualification. But I've led huge teams, across the globe. And I've really, really enjoyed doing that. And I just loved seeing people grow and develop throughout their career. So that's really why I fell into that space quite recently. And I'm also on the board of the Professional Women's Network here in Zurich and Zug as well. And so it's another outlet for me to be supporting particularly women in this space.
Thank you so much, Emily. When we met in person over there in Zurich, I was listening to your professional story and I thought, yeah, okay, she's going to be great at this kind of work because she's going to investigate everything. There will be no stone that would be left
Exactly.
unstumbled.
My magnifying glass out.
If you need insights, real challenge, yeah, that's the person. I love it. Thank you for coming here together with us today and offering your insights to the audience. I really appreciate it. And now, turning a little bit back into the theme of the meeting, having your resume ready. There are a few angles to that is like what you're going to have as content, how do you work with versions, when you start working on them, when you distribute them, how you distribute them. There are so many things that are important with regards to having a very alive resume. And I have learned that because very early in my career, and that's pre-LinkedIn times, there were all these career websites. I'm not really sure how they looked like in Europe because I was living in Brazil, but I'm pretty sure it was pretty much the same. And just by having your information there at hand and hire managers, recruiters, noticing that it was fresh, it was ready to be consumed and then to be made available to somebody else in the organization, I have got so many different jobs and I was able to move quite seamlessly throughout the market. And you fast forward 20 years to that, and you would think nowadays things are different, maybe because of technology, for example. And what my experience over the last couple of years has shown me is that's absolutely not the case. There are different ways of doing it, that's for sure. But owning my own resume has opened me doors that I never even thought were possible. And that's not even restricted to employment as such, but partnerships, contracting opportunities, project opportunities, and so on and so forth. So what I have experienced over the last months is that now more than ever, having a strong resume that is fresh, that's on point, that works for your career is a significant career advantage, especially for those that are now concerned that over the next few years, there may be a layoff coming. But that's only my experience, right? I would maybe turn to start randomly here to Vaclav and ask you, Vaclav, since you said you don't have a resume, or you didn't say that. You said you don't like writing resumes. How do you handle that for yourself? And how do you handle that for your clients?
In my ideal world, I would apply with my LinkedIn profile. That would be my ideal world. We will throw motivational letters and CVs into a bin. Again, motivational letters nowadays written 99.5% by ChatGPT in any case. So why are we doing it? And I'm here very, very weird. I love LinkedIn profiles, and I find the static of the piece of paper so boring that it costs me a lot of energy to look at it, to open it. What I do, I tell my clients how to do it, but I never do it for them, because for me this is like such a pain. Writing CV, search for someone who is definitely better, and that there are few rules which are important to be followed, but that's it. Don't overdo it. And as I'm very, very weird, I was exactly the person who was doing the CV all the time at the last moment, and stuff like that. I don't know how many CV variations. I never look at them because I hate them all. It's a very, very specific topic. So a weird career consultant who doesn't like CVs, that's Václav's. Let's close it there for the moment because I'm very talkable, you know me. So let's leave some space for other people.
Thank you, Václav. I think you opened a thread that I'm definitely interested to pursue. What is the position of LinkedIn in this constellation now and also going forward, right? And how are resumes on paper, even if it's digital paper, Word, PDF, different or same than your LinkedIn profiles? We should definitely explore that. Thank you so much for it. Emily, what are your thoughts? And be welcome to also reflect to Václav's thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I certainly learnt the hard way. I mean, I have to say. And as I've shared, I was at Deloitte for 26 years. And in that time, I had many different roles. So I started out as an auditor. Then I went into HR for 3 years. Then I became a forensic accountant. Then I became a global project manager or project director. So I had numerous different roles and I felt very secure in that space
Mhm.
and not having to update my CV at all throughout that whole period, of course, even though I did have these different opportunities. So I really felt that I've had multiple jobs, but clearly under the umbrella of Deloitte. So it came a bit of a shock when I couldn't even remember the last time I'd put a CV together. It was like an archaeological dig trying to find it, and it was like a time capsule when I did eventually find it. And looking at the photo of myself, which must have been sort of like 15 years before, something like that, I just didn't sort of recognize it. So it was a real scramble, and trying to put it together, under pressure, trying to remember and recall everything that I had done over the duration of Deloitte was just impossible, really, with the time frame that I had been allocated.
Okay. She dropped off. She'll be back very soon. And therefore, I would ask you then, Aytuna, to come into the stage and share a little bit your thoughts and how ready is your resume today?
A good question. Actually, when you mentioned about these old good times in the past, how it started, I just went back to those times where we also had quite a lot of career websites, but not LinkedIn. And I remember that because I like to create it by myself. I mean, my resume since the beginning, I like to format it to make it looking good. This is on top of the content, of course. And I was always feeling very disappointed when in some companies or in some career websites you have to follow their format, their content, so their rules. So that was always for me very limiting because I wanted to be a bit more than that. But yeah, in the past, I mean, and I would also agree that that's not the funniest part of career development, updating your resumes. So that in that side, I'm with myself. But on the other hand, I also like to use it as a kind of reflection, a mirror, written summary of myself, what I did, because we are all doing a lot in the years, and years are passing very, very quickly. So, and we also, I guess many people are also tending to see things as normal. So whatever they achieve, whatever they do, it becomes just business as usual. And I'm also quite humble on that topics. I never see things as great achievements. I say that I just did it as I should have done. But when you reflect it on paper using your resumes, I think it also gives you back that energy and that also fulfillment. And you see that, yeah, you have done something. So the years didn't pass for nothing or just for earning your salary, right? And I also see maybe for me personally, keeping your keeping your resume up to date is very important because throughout my career, I have never or very less like followed a regular track. So I always, in all my role changes, I have done something different. So it was never climbing the ladders as expected, but I always did some literal changes, role changes, function changes, company changes. So that's why it was always, it has been always important to keep your resume up to date and also shape it based on your next destination, because it's not just building on the same function different experiences, more achievements, but it's also changing the content. So that's why in all my times that I wanted to do a change, I had to change the content also. So not the storyline always changes when, I mean, if you are, for example, supply chain engineer, when you are going to apply for a supply chain management role, then you build your resume differently. But when you are a supply chain engineer, if you want to apply for a product management role, then you have to change your resume. So the story needs to change. And as this was most of the time the case for me, so my resume has been still always up to date. I find it very, valuable because doing things in last minute is also not something for me that I found it very stressful as well.
We share that thought, and that is something that you said about building the story and the history that happens over time, that I also noticed whenever I wanted to come back to specific achievements and specific experiences that are eventually important for one role or the other role. Then it was easier for me when I opened my master big resume that has all the details and could select that, compared to trying to get it from my memory that, the details were already gone, even if it was not that many years ago, because we are so much into the latest things that we are working, and we never know where value is going to be for companies. So thank you, Aytuna, for this very great insight. I would like to
May
hand it
I
over.
something into it? Very important. I think what Aytuna said, that most of the people are really blind for their own achievements. And this is what I see very, very often. You take it for granted that you could do it. No, it's only you. It's only you in this combination. This I find very, very important.
Yes, and claiming it to themselves, right, Václav, rather than saying that it was the universe or the entire
Yeah.
team or somebody else, right? That is also a subject that needs to change. And that's even more for interviews. Who did what and what was truly your role into that? I love that. I would like to bring it back to Emily. Emily, you had this very tiny little connection issue, and welcome back. We were delighted with hearing from your own experiences, and if you'd like to continue from there, I will be very thankful.
I don't quite know where I dropped off.
Be welcome to start from the beginning, because I can
will start
always
from the
edit the episode.
I would start from the beginning, but make it shorter. Yeah, so I was saying that I've been with Deloitte for 26 years, and I was able, and I was very, very appreciative that I was able to do many different roles when I was at Deloitte. So I started off as an auditor. I then went into HR for a bit, and I worked in graduate recruitment, and then I became a forensic accountant, and then I became a global project director after that. So whilst I made all those changes under the umbrella of Deloitte, I didn't actually have to submit a CV in any of that time. I was delighted when I was invited to put myself forward for a role at one of my clients, and I was asked, obviously, to submit my CV. And I sort of went into panic mode at this stage because I couldn't even remember the last time I'd put a CV together. And it was like an archaeological dig trying to find it, and it was like a time capsule when I did eventually find it. And looking at the photo of myself, which must have been sort of like 15 years before, something like that, I just didn't sort of recognize it. So it was a real scramble, and trying to put it together, under pressure, trying to remember and recall everything that I had done over the duration of Deloitte was just impossible, really, with the time frame that I had been allocated. Anyway, it was a positive story in the end, in that I did actually get that role. But nevertheless, I learnt, a very big lesson from that. And thank goodness I actually had updated it, because 3 years later, my role was actually eliminated. So I was then in the market, and I was needing to put my CV out back into the marketplace. So I only had to sort of update it 3 years worth, which was clearly in my memory. But at that time, when you've been made redundant, you're not in a good frame of mind to actually be writing your CV, and your self-worth is somewhat neglected at that point in time. So it's not a good time when you're writing out of fear rather than out of strength. And so I'm a very, very strong advocate now for me and my clients to actually be updating their CV regularly. And I would say that not actually doing it in the framework of the CV, which I find very constraining and suffocating at times, it's so sort of rigid in its format, but actually create a repository so that you can start collecting all of your achievements and accomplishments and all of your growth in a separate document, so that you can then tailor that accordingly when you actually need to pull out your CV. So I've definitely learned the hard way. And, I'm also not a massive fan of the CV. I think, you have to squeeze so much into these 2 pages or however long it needs to be. And, it is very restrictive. And I'm also a fan of LinkedIn, for sure. And I'm convinced over time that the CV will die a death at some point. Maybe we will. turn over to LinkedIn and having it in one place, because that's the other challenge that I find for my clients, is that they're having to ensure that there's consistency across LinkedIn and their CVs. And the other challenge, maybe I'm jumping ahead here for my clients, is that, and like myself, when I went back into the market, I actually had 4 different CVs as well for different roles. Clearly the foundation of everything that I had done was the same for these different roles, but they had different titles, and I was clearly pulling out my different accomplishments to be relevant to that role. And again, that's difficult on LinkedIn. So there's a shortfall on LinkedIn, is that you only can have one persona on LinkedIn. So that's one of the other challenges that I've identified as well.
I love the amount of insights you brought up, Emily, and I feel that we could start a track of 10 different lives, which each of them, right? I have been reflecting, and I already gave this tip for free for SAP a long time back. I still don't understand why they don't turn their success factors platform into a big resume repository, because every single major corporate you apply to the same platform. And every time you have to do the same things and provide the same information. And this is so unproductive and actually a missed opportunity for employers, for candidates, and for the intermediary that is already seeking them. But I won't get into this rabbit hole. I want to stick to some other things that you said, because you immediately connected to the question I have proposed for us to discuss. Is updating your resume smart career hygiene, or just what we do when it's already too late? And what I heard from you is the 2 versions of that story, at least as I understood. Doing it when it was already too late, and then figuring out what happens when. And at the same time, becoming proactive with it, that aligns again with Aytuna, what you said, and building this history over time. And something that I have changed, I would say, in the last 5 to 10 years. Before that, I was always having these multiple doc resumes that helped me, but at some point in time, I started getting lost. And then I figured I would work with a repository, as you have mentioned. And I created this gigantic Excel with several different accomplishments and experiences, and then tracking to each role and everything, so that I can easily always put it back together depending on the role. But then I heard a recruiter on another live one of these days saying that you should only have one version of your resume. Václav, how would you react to that?
Definitely not. I would go with Emily and have several versions of the CV. So because you need to tailor-make the CV to the job you are applying for. And this is the clear problem. How congruent is it with your LinkedIn profile? Because your LinkedIn profile needs to be like catch it all party, and your CV very, very specific. So I would definitely have several versions. That would be, but the famous story, 10 career consultants, you get 10 different versions of a CV, and everybody has his famous formula. One of the popular dogma is like having 2 pages. I'm a big fan of short CVs, but still I would never compromise readability of the CV. So I squeeze everything of 2 pages. So if the CV is great, people will read even 3 pages if the first half page will catch their attention. So that would be my short, and don't believe all this other popular myth, like, you will outsmart the ATS and stuff like that. Like, come on. It everywhere. I'm laughing myself to death all the time. Let's outsmart the ATS together. This is a very, very famous sales pitch for many career consultants. I truly don't believe this.
I hear you. And I hear it has a lot to do with people in the end, right? Because people have still different personalities and preferences. And as recruiters and hire managers, they often let all of that come in the process. And I saw, Aytuna, you were also nodding. I was curious to hear your reactions and your thoughts alongside Václav's.
I would also go for multiple versions, but at the end, I think it's not the same multiplicity like you have in the motivation letters, because motivation letters are for sure should be written very customized way for the job you are applying. So there you need to do it really to the point to that role. But on the resumes, yes, you can and you should have different versions. But at the end, it's not a black or white type of difference, right? So it's just telling the story in a different way, maybe emphasizing something else there, because depending on the role, but also depending on the company, right? Some companies are more to the achievements on financials, but some companies are more keen on hearing some social impact, etc. So that's why it's not like saying something completely different in this resume versus the other one. It's just telling in a different way and prioritizing things differently. So it's not that you should have maybe 10, 15 versions, so not a CV for each application. So I think that's also not manageable practically. But at least if there is a significant difference between the companies that you are applying or between the functions roles you are applying, then you should have some domain specific resumes, a couple of them only, because keeping them up to date is also not that practical. So we should also not make it more complicated than it should be.
I hear you. And I have worked in consultancy for a very long time in the financial services industry. And then I moved later on into pharma. And if you're preparing the same kind of stories, even I was in tech, you are going to have to express it in completely different ways, because even how compliance works in finance and how compliance works in pharma is different. You talk about business results and what kind of business orientation, mission, and how you connect to these things in finance. It's different from how you do that in pharma. And if you try to mix that, then the person on the other side would feel disconnected. Who's this guy? Where is he coming from? I don't even know if he's talking about the same things that we are asking here in the job description, even if it is the same or has the same meaning. I'm curious, Emily, because you alluded to the fact that, yes, you create multiple versions of resumes, also depending on how you want to position yourself then in the future and what has been your story. But then you also mentioned this challenge with LinkedIn nowadays of having the one-to-many kind of mapping. How do you manage that proactively?
Yeah, so I mean, the only advice really that I can give to my clients is that I would say that everybody has like a dominant profile, a dominant CV. And so for you to go with that, because confusion is something that we definitely want to avoid. Consistency is important, and to avoid any misunderstanding or confusion about what is your positioning is something that we definitely want to avoid. And my impression is that recruiters are very active on LinkedIn, and so it's very clear that you need to have this very strong positioning, and you simply can't change it every 5 minutes. It's just not going to work like that. And it's obviously a shortfall of LinkedIn only being able to have one persona. But I think if you're a generalist, I've written about this on LinkedIn about being this generalist. And certainly here in Switzerland, my experience is that the generalist is not a role that's easily filled. And Switzerland is very much about the expert. So you do need, even if you are a generalist, and often a lot of my clients describe themselves as a generalist, but from that, we identify things that make them an expert in something, because that is something that's going to make them stand out. So in answer to your question, I don't think there really is an answer, and I share this openly with clients and on LinkedIn as well, is that this is the shortfall at the moment of the way that LinkedIn is designed.
Yeah, I feel that is the same. And in my experience, you know me relatively well. I have just a few tiny too many interests in my life, and it's virtually impossible to bring them in one profile in LinkedIn that makes sense even to myself. Václav, you know me, right? I bet you can see what I'm talking about when you visit my profile.
Yeah. This was a good statement.
Yeah, and in the end, it's a reality. I'm curious, Václav, about what you're telling your clients with regards to this consistency between LinkedIn and resumes, and how you suggest them to manage it.
I tell them the same story all the time. Put the most important achievements on the first half page and make sure that the biggest achievements are congruent with your LinkedIn profiles. You should find them there as well. Sometimes it's very, very difficult to combine all of it together. Again, if you are like for example, would be a professional ice hockey goaltender, and the same moment you will try to play tennis on the high level, this probably won't fit together that much because the sports are so different. So then it's very, very difficult. So if you have like really two parallel careers which are not congruent, then it's difficult. In most of the cases, it's sort of doable. And again, it's not exact science. It's not mathematics. It's not theoretical physics. It's just unless you have weird typos, completely weird graphics on your CV, typos on your LinkedIn profile, you are good if you use a common sense, because it's not magic. Most of the stuff is common sense. Grab the people attention. That's the whole story. How do you do it? Nowadays, you have so many great tools for doing that for free. Just simply ask AI. Go to Gemini Live Studio, say, hey, Gemini, share the screen. Would you please criticize my LinkedIn profile? And Gemini will tell you. So even if people have the feeling, yeah, we are career consultant, we'll lose all our jobs because AI will do it better than us. It's not true, but there are so many great tools which you can use as an add-on, or if a career consultant is not available, Gemini Live Studio. Hey, Gemini, this is the job description. Could you please prepare me for a job interview? And here you go. So
Thank you, Václav. And I have some good news for us here. This is the first time we are running the whole stream in Riverside itself, and it's now working in LinkedIn. And we have already our first guests over there watching us here. So, my dear guests, you have access to the chat. So, if you have questions, be welcome to come in and type. It would be wonderful to address those questions here live for you. Václav, you're talking about tools, right? And when I started my own job search, I remember I did a trial with JobScan. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I guess some of you are. And I wasn't super happy with the results, I must say. Some of it made sense. Most of it did just wasted my time. And that was around the time that I started then playing with ChatGPT. That's, again, just another version of Gemini in that sense for that particular use. And this is exactly what I did. I started bringing the job description, my master resume, a template that I wanted to use, and ask it, can you prepare a version that follows this template using this data that matches this particular job description? Something would come out, usually not great, but 70%, 75%, which I find absolutely amazing. And then I would work the rest of 25%, 30% to make it meet. Aytuna, have you had similar experiences with tools and platforms that help people then building resumes that are impactful for particular job offerings or postings?
Definitely. I think not looking too much far, but in the last maybe 5 years, I think it's purely turned to be the AI. I mean, the ChatGPT, Gemini, or tools like that. Because I don't think, at least at the moment, with these opportunities we have, we don't need to search for more or look to different tools or platforms, because it's also good that, as you mentioned, I mean, even this story, like giving 3 things to build, come up with one outcome. I think that's amazing, right? I mean, what would you need more? So that's why that's also great that you can shape this. So I think having AI or generative AI behind, you can use it in different ways. It's like creating, which was also more or less the story that you mentioned. So you can ask it for creation. If you wish, you can create it yourself and ask for criticization, like Václav mentioned, or you can also do it and then just polish it, because the part that I don't really very much like personally about the resumes, that there are also some words to avoid and words to use, right? So this, I find it a bit artificial. So that's not me. I mean, I am much interested about the content than how you word it, but that's also the fact. So you have to live with it. So that's not something that I would challenge. But that part, especially for me and for people similar to my character who are not really very perfect marketeers or polishing guys, I think that's very important to also use AI for this kind of advancement of your CV, because the content comes from you. That's something that nobody else can help with. But polishing it in the words that are more attractive, more catchy. I think that's especially in that part of the whole process, AI is, I think, an amazing resource to utilize. And I would always encourage to use it, because that's not something that you are just faking or something like that. It's just changing two simple words and the whole impact changes. So that's a bit interesting, strange to accept, but it's like this. So it's, I think, the nature of language and nature of understanding or communication. So that would be the part that I would highly encourage, and I think that's more than enough to become with an almost perfect resume for yourself.
I love that, Aytuna. That there are so many thoughts in my mind now when you talk about the importance of language. It's not exactly that theme of our next live, but in that sense, I have been studying a lot of that, and we even teach our kids, those children, what is the difference between saying "I want" and "I would like to," and that's why it's so important to be careful with the words that we use also in the resume. They do make a difference for the person that is interpreting them, to the point that my second stage with this artificial intelligence tools in the context of resumes was to add one additional step. Then I would submit my resume to the artificial intelligence and ask it to play as a recruiter working for that company and that job. And then to criticize the CV and tell me why it wouldn't select me for the interview. And then it would open up the Pandora box of, oh, you actually missed this word. And that is actually this point that may be misinterpreted. This for someone in this industry actually means that. And then I kept enhancing it. And I'm curious to ask Emily, is this also how you have been using technology in the context of preparing resumes, or what is your experience there?
Yeah, so I'm absolutely passionate about using AI, and I support my clients by preparing for them customized AI bots to support their process. So one of the key things, I haven't got time to share all of my bots, but what I attempt to do is to help them differentiate themselves. So I find that using AI is actually making them very similar. And I can imagine, from a relative, it must be a nightmare. I'm sure they're just reading the same words, the same sort of similar descriptions. So I've created bots that enable the CVs or the cover letters to actually stand out, to be different. How can I make this different? How can I make this stand out? How can I make this be on top of the pile? So that's one of the core bots that I prepare for them. But also I'm using very much my forensic skills. We mentioned that at the beginning, and interrogating. And so things like the job description, I know a lot of people use it to identify all the key words, but I've created a bot that really interrogates the job description to identify, there may be some insights that are not so apparent. And so I've got a bot that really interrogates it, pulls out maybe some of the implicit information within the job description, and also comparing job descriptions from similar jobs to see if there is anything that is missing actually in the job description that you're applying for, that you could then use. The market seems that they're using a lot of technology in this space, for example, but this job description doesn't mention it. Again, to enable you to somehow differentiate yourself so that you're on top of the pile. So my intent when I create all the bots is, how can I get this person on top of the pile? And that's the message that I sort of deliver throughout all of my bots, and to help people challenge themselves to identify all their achievements as well, which is goes down very well with my clients, because often it uncovers achievements and skills and strengths that they hadn't really thought about.
Love that. And love what you said about being or getting the candidate on the top of the pile, because that's so very important. I want to bring within the context of that comment, Emily, the hidden job market or whatever it is that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, certainly in Switzerland, having the referrals is an important component for sure. And from my own experience, I would say that there's sort of equal measures of how my clients have actually got opportunities and been successful. And to give people comfort is that I would say majority have gone through the traditional route of the CV. And, people often ask me that. And I would say that many of my clients have been successful going through the normal so-called traditional route of using the CV. Now, they have built on top of that, and one of my clients, for example, felt very, very reserved about reaching out to the hiring manager. She knew the name of the person, and my recommendation was, why don't you reach out to her, ahead of your interview, just, to introduce yourself on LinkedIn. And she was very, very cautious about that. She felt that it was something that wasn't appropriate, and nevertheless she decided that she would, and she actually had a very, very good and engaging conversation on LinkedIn via direct messages with the hiring manager ahead of the interview. Now, whether or not that made a difference, I don't know, but so my recommendation is, there is this balance between the two, and if you've gone down the traditional route, is there a way of identifying people in the organisation that may be able to support you? And there is such willingness, I have to say, of people that do want to support you more than perhaps what people expect. So if you do know somebody in the organisation, to the extent that it helps, I don't have statistics, I don't have any data points on that, but I'm convinced that people have a good intention of wanting to be able to support you.
I am not a huge fan of this quote unquote purpose driven networking. I am more fan of building up a network up front, that the network is ready when you need it. And this running around with I need a job, which most people need a job. I can imagine that if you are a hiring manager and being constantly approached by other people, yeah, I need a job, it gets really, really annoying for this. I would be here very, very selective. And again, this depends on your inner setup, on your personality, on your culture upbringing. In the US and Anglo-Saxon world, it's very, very straightforward. A lot of people do it like that. I think in Switzerland is a little bit different. I tell the clients all the time the first story. If I tell you something and doesn't resonate with you, please don't do it. I'm not here to change you as a human being, as a person. You have to be your natural. So if you are absolutely okay reaching out, do it. Me personally, it doesn't resonate with me and I wouldn't do it as a person. So, and it's your choice. Both ways can generate results. I'm a bigger fan of building up upfront and talking to peers, because I remember from Novartis, we've been sometimes influencing hiring decision 2 level about us, because the boss came up, asked me, we have interviewing this and this person, whom would you pick? And we say, pick this lady because the guy is a great talker, great salesperson, but he doesn't deliver results. And so it's not only just I talk to person X and the person does something for me. It's about the whole networking, about the whole environment, which most people neglect.
Yes, I think I would combine both approaches maybe, because I agree that building all the process or running all the process through networking or through people is something that is not sustainable and not also strong. And yes, in some cultures, sometimes it's maybe only going through your networks, your relations. But at the end, when we talk from a global lens, I think there needs to be a balance in between. And of course, if you are not lucky maybe, but if you have invested enough to build your network upfront, I think that's definitely the most comfortable way to do it, because then you also don't hesitate to reach out to people who you are already in touch with. So I think that's makes it a bit easier for most of the people who are a bit reluctant on this. But I would also use this. I mean, I don't know if it's right way to call it a networking, but for me, for example, it's very interesting because in my personal life, in my social life, I'm quite introvert, so I'm not that much talkative, outspoken, etc. But when it comes to my profession, when it comes to my career, I can be very extrovert. So I don't hesitate to reach out to hiring manager, to talent acquisition, and so far I have never regretted about it, because it's also having a filtering in advance, that if you are good for that position, if you believe that you have a strong background, strong CV, then adding this connection is just can make things a bit faster and maybe bring you a couple of steps up on the pile. But if you don't have anything to offer, then I also don't think the person that you are reaching out would just do something for you for the sake of networking, right? So that's why if you have a strong offer, then just making it visible, making it a bit outstanding than the crowd. I think that would definitely help, because I think, it has been always like this maybe, but nowadays for every vacancy there are thousands of applicants. So that's why even out of those thousands, hundreds have a quite strong qualification, because quite qualified people are unemployed at the moment. So that's why your background, your experience, your capabilities are bringing you still to the year. So to close this gap, I think these connections are always helpful. But I also agree it needs to fit to you, because it doesn't need to. It shouldn't be sounding fake, just pretending. So it should come naturally. And also it should be done when really necessary. So not just asking someone, yeah, I need your support, I need your help or something, but just to get connection, and also to get some insights from internal, right? Because if you connect some people from that function, that company, you also learn something which you can maybe reflect back to your CV or your motivation letter, or maybe during the interview. So that's always win if you do it at the right time in the right way.
May I add a short comment for those introverted among us? There is a great book, Networking for People Who Hate Networking, written by Deborah Zack, and check it out. And this is really a great book and a great myth buster that only extroverted people are good networkers. And I am a mixture of both. I am outgoing extrovert in the real life, but digitally I am shy. So it's a weird combination. And I feel obliged if somebody knows me from LinkedIn, I need to know them as well, and gives me all the time weird feeling. Somebody tells me I know you, I say, oh, sorry, I don't know. So read this book, Aytuna. This is a great eye opener. I'm sure you will love it. There is a group of penguins on the cover. One is standing aside with a subtitle, "You can eat your lunch alone and still being successful." That's a very good book.
Yeah. I mean, it's still, of course, difficult to give a number, let's say 3 or 5 or so, but still, going back to my previous comments, depending on how wide you want to go. So if you are very focused and targeting one function or one job title, then maybe you have 1 or 2 versions depending on the companies, because if you are applying for a big corporate, then a startup or mid-sized company, then of course you may need to fine-tune a little bit. But if you are looking for different roles, I mean, if you are applying for R&D and supply chain and something, then of course it's similar to the number of different roles you are applying, then you should have it. But of course, then you also need to question yourself before coming to the number of resumes, if it is realistic, or if it is even right way to go that spread it, or should I be a bit more focused? So that's maybe the first question. So when you define your pool of targets or destinations, then you can define it. But for me, the 2 main criteria is the nature of the job that you are applying. So if it is too different, then you definitely need a different version. And also the nature of the companies that you are applying. If it is too different, then you also need to have a different version. So if you can make a kind of combination of these two, then you get the number of resumes that you need to have. But I definitely think, as you do, Eduardo, have a master file. I always have master files in my daily work as well, and that you create different versions very easily, very quickly, and that makes your life a bit easier. So I think if you have the master full of everything, then just picking out the right things for a couple of resumes, I think that should be also not that complicated.
Ladies first.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, to me, the important thing is clarity. And I think if you're spreading yourself over 25 different roles, I mean, this is just probably an exaggeration, then that clarity is just not going to come through. I just can't imagine having, say more than 4 roles. I had 4 roles in mind. Majority of the content of the CV was somewhat similar, but I was tweaking it for each different opportunity. So for me, clarity is the utmost importance. And having been a hiring manager, what I'm looking for in a CV is that it's relevant, absolutely relevant to the position that I have advertised. And it used to amaze me, actually, how many times I used to receive CVs where I was having to do, like a treasure hunt, trying to find in the CV what was relevant to the job description. And so clearly this person just had one CV, probably, that they were just distributing out. And it was therefore very general because it was trying to cover all the different roles that they were probably applying for. So, I mean, my view is that you can't really expand beyond I don't know, I'm saying 4 or 5 different roles, because it really will compromise your clarity.
There is no much to add on that. I think you summarized it perfectly fine, Emily. I would add another example, which is completely against weird. A good friend of mine who is negotiating with the FDA results of clinical phase 1 trials, regularly flying in, really a deep expert, but he's a chemist and he's on a glass ceiling because he's not MD. If he would be a MD, he would be a senior vice president or whatever. As a chemist, he cannot break through the glass ceiling. But his CV shows his travels. On the first page, you find his 4 years. He spent 4 years in Africa traveling alone on his motorbike. And this you find on his CV. I said, hey, what would you like to achieve with this CV? And he told me, I don't want to have these stupid regular jobs. So this is another extreme when you can tailor your CV, which is so crazy that you get attracted only by people who think, wow, this is really interesting. And you find all this information somewhere later. But his first page was his travels through Africa as a chemist and expert on clinical trials. So we can have, sometimes thinking out of a box and making something completely different as all the others could be helpful as well. My dad was telling to me, if the crowd is running in the one direction, go to the other side. That was his saying, what he told me. I would say I'm a perfect example of that.
Okay, it's a good question. I truly believe that getting started is just having a blank piece of paper. Put the CV to one side, having a blank piece of paper, and just thinking about what were all your achievements, what are all your growth opportunities that you've had, where can you demonstrate how you've excelled in your organization, and just write it down on a blank piece of paper, and not thinking about the structure of the CV. And certainly, as I've spoken before about the use of AI, and AI, if you're prompting it in a way that actually really supports you in challenging your career journey so far with the roles that you've got in mind, and with those two things combined, really being able to identify what all of your achievements and accomplishments are. What are your strengths? What are your skills? What are your differentiators? And that's really what you're looking for. How can I stand out from the crowd? And that's the most, I think, important thing. And certainly when you're using AI, using tools around you to really interrogate your career history, so that you're really identifying all of those gold nuggets, as I call them, or your diamonds, which are your value to the organization, and thinking about what is your professional value that you can contribute to your future employer.
I love the idea with the white sheet of paper. That's great because I'm using it a lot. White sheet of paper is amazing. And sometimes people are so overwhelmed with an empty sheet. Write down everything what you are really good at.
Yeah. And if you're fearful, this is what I learned in my art classes, if you're fearful of the white piece of paper, just smudge it with like coffee stains or something. Just don't make it perfect. Do you know, as a very amateur artist, I found that such a great piece of advice, because you just see this white piece of paper of something perfect, but let's make it not perfect, because this exercise isn't perfect.
No. Yeah, and we are not perfect as well, and we never
Exactly.
be. We are human beings with our errors and everything what we have. So, but yeah,
Exactly.
authenticity is the important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
I am again a very weird salesperson because I never offer anything unless somebody is going to ask me. So that's if you like, look up my LinkedIn profile and follow me in my featured section. You'll find a newsletter which is full of good tips, and if you find it interesting, we can discuss.
Yeah, I would definitely build on what Emily said. So start. I mean, it's yes, scary maybe at the beginning, but start with a blank page, because when you start like that, then you start with yourself, not from the destination that you want to land or go. So start with yourself, and when you write down the things, I would recommend that you really focus on what have you done that energized you along your career. also what drained you to avoid writing them or mentioning about them. And also the skills part, because I think it's now a fact that all these hiring or talent acquisition activities are, I think, at the moment trying to switch to skill based, which will take quite some time in my view, but still focusing on the skills. So which skills you can use and you like to use and you see yourself developing. I think that's also another dimension that needs to be in that white paper before translating them into achievements or experiences. But also do not be humble about writing down your achievements. And especially I saw it somewhere, it was asking that what are the things that you believe you will forget if you don't write it down now. Again, to the point, after some time you see everything as usual, as normal, and smaller. So that's why what you believe needs to be there, because then you have an evidence. So I think these kind of dimensions or directions you need to have in your mind when start writing things down. Then translating into a format, into wordings or into sentences, I think that's an easier exercise than putting things on white paper. So that would be my recommendation. And don't at the beginning, if you are starting from scratch from white paper, also don't look any best practices, any examples, or any job advertisements, etc. So this should come later on, to not to have the influence without reflecting your true self. So then, start from yourself. Yes, indeed. Then you can fine tune, make it better, get inspired from others, etc. But first, start from yourself. Yeah, very easy. LinkedIn. The platform. I'm quite active on that, and I love to connect with people from there. So you can find me easily. My name is also not that common, so if you write Aytuna Otto, you will find only me, no one else. I would be happy if anyone needs an inspiration, a discussion, a help, and feel free to connect me through LinkedIn.
Again, very simple as Aytuna, LinkedIn. I tell people, CVs are boring. LinkedIn is active, open 24/7. Go there. If you overspend your time polishing your CV endlessly, maybe think again and devote half of the time to your LinkedIn visibility. Post something which makes sense. Comment a lot, interact with other people, and the platform will reward you sooner or later. Same here.
So in exactly the same way, LinkedIn, our favorite tool. Yeah. So again, my name is pretty unique, so you won't confuse me with anybody else. So yeah, absolutely. I'd be delighted for you to connect with me on LinkedIn, and there you can find, get directed towards booking a session with me. A complimentary session, is that something that you would like to do? We can talk about where some of your challenges are, and I'm soon going to be launching a quiz which will enable you to really identify where some of the areas are that you may be stuck. And I've curated this quiz from a few years now of working with clients to identify their potential shortcomings or challenges that they may have. So this will really be a great diagnostic for you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.